Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to the Big Ideas platform. It's my second coming. The first time I was the compere of the very first edition, and now I'm here as a speaker. Gross, right? Right. I come to this event today with 6 years experience being on the field as a campaigner, community organizer, and scholar in the last 2 years in menstrual health. And my big idea, we have the slides, please. So I bring here my experiences on the field. I quickly realized after a while that distributing pads will not cut it for me and the population of people I wanted to influence with my work in the menstrual health space. And so my big idea, next slide please. My big idea is destigmatizing menstruation through open dialogue in the media. I've worked in the media for the past 28 years. I know the power of the media and the influence the media can wield in changing the narrative completely in terms of menstrual health. The girls you see there are those who were on the podcast with us, girls from Bariga, girls from Ajegunle, whose voices were amplified on a continental platform. So blood is life. Menstruation plays a crucial role in perpetuating human population. Menstruation is a site of a lot of things to women. But first, let's look at mental health. It is a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. It is the foundation for emotions, thinking, communication, learning, resilience, self-esteem, hope. It can stem from a complex interplay of biological, psychological, and environmental factors. You see there statistics about menstrual health in Nigeria adolescents, but we have global statistics as well. But first, let me go back to the types of mental health that we have. There is the mood disorders. There are 4 types of mental health. Mood disorders, such as depression, or bipolar disorder. There is anxiety disorders. There is personality disorders. And the extreme one, psychotic disorders. Now, next slide, please. What we've done is to look at how mental health impacts adolescents and women, and to say, look, this brings anxiety. Why? Because there are many things women are dealing with in terms of mental health. They're dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with distress, they're very fallen about where the next supply of menstrual items to manage their menstruation is going to come from. They have period disorders that is stressing them out, and they also have to go to work. So we decided we will deal with this from the media perspective by creating this campaign and creating a podcast that we can use to clarify a lot of issues with women, men, boys, and the entire society. Next slide, please. And so we created the My Period Stories podcast, essentially also because we wanted to deal with the silence around periods, because even that silence is impacting on the mental health of a lot of menstruators, because it's almost like an oath of silence. Nobody wants to say, oh, I am not even menstruating, because that's a condition as well, and that impacts on the mental well-being of menstruators. Some people deal with, dysmenorrhea, painful menstruation. Some people deal with endometriosis. And so we thought we should start looking at storytelling in public health communication. And because I'm here today, I'm looking at the intersection of menstrual health and mental health. Next slide, please. So we also recognize that in storytelling, narratives are ideological. It's important who is telling the story and whose stories are being told and how we're telling the stories. So for us, we started with people with disabilities. The woman there works with the deaf, and we had 3 series of episodes on the excluded. And the girls there were talking about their experiences in school and in their families. It is important to know that there are power relations in the telling of stories, and we need to address that as well in the storytelling, in embracing open dialogue, in destigmatizing menstruation. Next slide, please. So, stories. Stories are fundamental to many cultures across the world. Stories means whereby we hand down values and norms and myths and all kinds of interesting things year on year, generations after generations. Storytelling is important. And so we decided, looking globally at the narrative about menstruation, we recognized that the pre-colonial African narrative is missing. In that photo on your screen, you see women holding fowl. Let me call it fowl, okay? In Ijebu land in southwest Nigeria, once a girl sees her first menstruation, it's called Minaki. They get a fowl, they kill it for her, they celebrate that instance. They celebrate that moment. But you see, nowadays, that narrative, and it's in almost all cultures, that narrative is missing in the global narrative. We've jettisoned our own African narrative about menstruation, the celebratory thing about it, the becoming rituals that come with menstruation. We've jettisoned it, and we've begun to see it as a curse and a burden. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, there's a need to reframe menstrual health. There's a need to begin to disabuse the minds of our young teenagers that menstruation is a site of sexualization, that menstruation is a site of self-objectification. We need to reframe the narrative about menstrual health, that it is not about shame and shaming, that it is not about abjection, that it is not a curse, it is not a burden, it is not a disability, although some people see it as a disability, and I'm coming there. And we should also reframe it in such a way that girls and women do not see menstruation as a source of moral panic. And yes, people will panic if they're dealing with period poverty, if they do not have the access to the items they need to maintain their menstruation. And a lot of teenagers are on this table. They understand what I'm saying. In that photo, we brought girls from Ajegunle, from Bariga, to the studio to tell their stories. It's one of my favorite episodes of our podcast because, we were able to bring girls to the living rooms of people to give clarity to the issues they were dealing with. Next slide, please. And inclusion. When we started the Pat Scholarship expression of our sanitary media campaign, we went to Ibadan, Cheshire Home. There's a high school there, and it's for children, boys and girls living with disabilities. And that's where we met this young lady on wheelchair. For the first time since I started the campaign, I realized that there's a whole string of issues regarding those menstruators living with disabilities. I realized from this young lady that it is a lot of stress to menstruate as somebody living with disability. And many times they need caregivers. They need people who can be frustrated in the process of caring for them. I got to know that some of them are even sterilized without their consent. I got to know that they suffer a lot of violations discriminations, and there's a lot of violence around girls with disabilities who are menstruating. So the story of the excluded is important in our menstrual narratives. It's not just about distributing pads in communities. It is about giving clarity, embracing open dialogue in the media, not consigning menstrual health to commemorative days. World Menstrual Hygiene Day is coming, and so, hey, we're looking for experts, we're looking for people who have something to say. No, it should be intentional. Because menstruation, as I said when I started, is responsible for perpetuating the human population. But for women, there will be no continuity for mankind. And so, all should be included. We should begin to prioritize menstrual dignity. Women should be able to menstruate in dignity. And it's not going to happen if we continually shame women for the conditions that they go through when they menstruate. When you see people, girls or women who have hair on, in certain parts of their body, we laugh. But they're going through mental stress. They're going through mental torture. When I went for my master's degree in South Africa some years back, I had to return to Nigeria to remove my womb because I was having fibroids, and I'd done 2 surgeries of fibroids. There was not going to be a 3rd surgery. If it was going to happen, I would have to remove my womb. Luckily, I didn't, because I think the doctor just chickened out. But I have friends who have done it. In our season 2 of my period stories on Africa Magic Family, which will come before the end of the year, the first guest we spoke with was a woman who had to remove a womb, married with 2 children. But the mental stress, the anxiety, the lows and highs of taking that decision, she shared with us. I have another friend who'd never been married, had no children. She had to remove her womb because she couldn't deal with fibroids, the complications of fibroids anymore. And she called me on a hospital bed. She said, Funke, I heaved a sigh of relief when I came to, after the what's it called now, wore off. She said, I looked at myself and said, finally, I can have my life back. That tells you that menstruation, there's an intersection between menstruation and mental well-being of a lot of menstruators, much more than you can ever imagine. I had somebody who lives with endometriosis who was on my Period Stories podcast. She said to us, endometriosis is an invisible disability. She says, I go everywhere with my box of medication. If she didn't say it, you wouldn't know, because she travels a lot. And a lot of women are dealing with a lot of menstrual disorders that we need to be empathetic about. Next slide, please. And so at the Sanitary Pad Media Campaign, we're looking at how we can continually normalize period conversations, not only to deal with mental stresses that women go through, but to bust that habit of silence around issues pertaining to menstruation. We have the radio drama serial, we have the essay competition. The PAT Scholarship is our community outreaches to urban and rural areas where we have the vulnerable. And then we started actually that podcast with an audio version, which is what you see there. In all that we do, we're trying to normalize period conversations. And as I said, my big idea is to destigmatize menstruation through open dialogue in the media. Next slide, please. This woman suddenly started chatting me up one afternoon. She said, Funke, what you're doing is so needful. I am here in the market. I'm sitting down on a slab. Market women are coming to me with water, with malts, with pain-relieving tablets. It's my period again. I didn't know it was going to come when I came out to shop. I'm feeling dizzy. I'm feeling like fainting. We invited her over to the second season of our podcast. And at some point during the podcast, she couldn't control herself. She almost started crying. We had to take a break. What am I saying? There's a correlation between menstruation and your brain health. A lot of women are going through mental torture that they can't verbalize. And we, the media, need to amplify menstruation. Why? Because it is, as I said, at the center of perpetuating the human population. We need to continually destigmatize. We need to embrace storytelling. It is important because in telling stories, we close the gap that statistics give us, that data give us. We find ourselves in the shoes of the women who are menstruating and dealing with their mental and have their mental health messed up. We need to embrace open dialogue. We, the media, have the power to influence much more than the influencers on social media, because we have this traditional media. We can combine with social media and do the needful and push the narrative about menstrual health. So my advice to policymakers in that quote I have over there is that narratives close the gap. In listening to the stories of women who are menstruating, you can create an entirely new curriculum that will pull in our teenagers into more knowledge about access, about what's going on in their bodies. I remember when we were at Bariga, a girl came to us and said, but you know, I don't see it all the time. Did you tell your mom? No. Have you told your teachers? No. So even teenagers are dealing with irregular periods, and it's affecting them, but they're not talking. So policymakers, I know that we have the guidance and counseling units, but we need mental health units in secondary schools as well. Whether we're going to merge it with guidance and counseling units, or it's going to be a standalone, I don't know, but you need to listen to the stories. You need to find clarity in the stories that people are telling, and create better ways for women who constitute 50% of Nigeria's population to be more productive, for our girls to stop being absent in schools, because lack of access is a greater reason, is a pivotal reason why girls are absent from school. And when girls are absent from school, they cannot attain that level that we want them to attain to contribute to national development. So my fellow innovators, I want you to remember that Africa is the bedrock of civilization. I said that with my full chest. So we need to include the African narrative in everything that we do. We need to prioritize how we Africans celebrate menstruation. I read HODAP 2024. She did her research in Tanzania. And the things I wrote there were the things that she talked about. She said is the starting point of life, menstruation, that is. It is access to adulthood, to parenthood, to communal respect. It is not a burden. It is not never a burden or a curse. It is, we are important. We need to dignify menstruators. Finally, to the public, please empathize with menstruators. When you have somebody who is irritable in your office, it is not the time to say, oh, women, they're like that. Maybe she's doing that thing that they do. No, please note that menstruation is not the same experience for every woman. Some people don't even care. They don't have any complications, but a lot more women have complications. Our girls, they are anxious, they're irritable, they're depressed. There is PMDD, I think. That one, you get depressed a week before your period, you get depressed a week after your period. How do you manage that if you're in the workplace? So we need to show more empathy. We need to embrace dialogue. We need to tell our friends, our women, everywhere to speak out. Because if we don't speak out, our policymakers will know what to do. And I thank the Bauchi State government for that bill, which has gone to the governor for accent. When the governor approves, in Bauchi State, there will be pad banks. In Bauchi State prisons, where we have a lot of control over women, will have access to pads. And when I started the Period Stories podcast, somebody said to me, you're crazy. Where are you going to get the content to go on? You're not going to last beyond 2 quarters. I said, watch me. Because I can do a quarter, 13 13-week episode on inclusion alone. And nobody thinks of what women go through in the prisons, because there's a lot of violence going on there arising from menstruation. Finally, we need to know that post-COVID pandemic has taught us that the workplace can be a better place. We can work from home. So there is remote work now. I am appealing to our policymakers to consider menstrual leave for those who have difficult menstruation. In our audio podcast, I spoke with this man, Muka Salumbu, who was the head of the National Institute of Human Relations in Zambia, where they have menstrual leave. I was curious. In Nigeria, I hear people tell me, Funke, come down from your high horse. It's not going to happen in Nigeria. They're going to abuse it, and they're going to be going on all kinds of leave, left, right, and center. Besides, you women, you are insatiable. You have 3 Mother's Day. You have maternity leave. Now you're asking for menstrual leave. Wow. You guys, you think the world revolves around you. Yes, it does. Actually, it does. However, we are not contending with the men. We are asking for compassion, for kindness, for empathy. We're asking that we can have menstrual leave in our labor laws to make the world a better place, to make menstruators better positioned to contribute, to be productive. Finally, I will leave in the words of Chris Bobel and Elizabeth Kissington. They are menstrual scholars. They said, menstruation matters, and so do the ways we talk about it, write about it, and illustrate it. Thank you very much.